Okay, this is lesson 96, and we're going to be using reciprocals, which is what we learned about last lesson, to divide fractions. So it's kind of just a part two to this lesson. Okay, now let's look at this problem. It says 1/2 divided by 2/3. Okay, now I told you how to work this mathematically, okay, and we're going to show you how to do that, but let's try to make sense of it real quick. This problem means how many 2/3 are in 1/2, okay? How many 2/3 are in 1/2, okay? So 1/2 divided into 2/3, okay? So how many 2/3, okay, if you want to write that out, how many 2/3 are in 1/2? That's the question we're asking. Okay, so if you were to draw this, there's thirds. How many 2/3 are in 1/2? Well, as you can see, that's half right there. All right, and so we're actually going to try to answer that question. All right, so let's look at this. Okay, let's work it mathematically, and then I want you to see how we're going to get this answer. Okay, so I'm going to erase this question right here that I wrote. Okay, let's do this mathematically based on how I did it earlier. Okay, remember the first rule, you can't really divide fractions. Okay, so this divide has to change to multiply. Okay, so watch this. I'm just going to write it down here. Times, okay, but when I change this division to multiplication, what happens to the fraction to the right? Hopefully you remember that we change it to its reciprocal. So 2/3 would become 3/2. Okay, does everybody see that? Now, I'm going to erase that just to get it out of the way. Okay, now let's work the problem. Now you would go 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, and so they're saying that 3/4 is the answer. Okay, 3/4 is the answer. So we would have to completely break this up into fours for you to completely understand. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'm not quite sure if it does, but that's the way we're going to be able to work these kind of problems. Okay, now let's do another one. Okay, here's an example. It says divide. Okay, and then it says divide 2/3 divided by 1/2. Okay, again, hopefully you can see that we're going to change this division problem to a multiplication problem. And when we do that, we have to change the fraction to the right to its reciprocal. So 1/2 would become the opposite, 2/1. And then now let's work it. 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 1 is 3. So the answer to this problem is 4/3, but hopefully you can quickly realize that something's wrong with this fraction. Does anybody know what that is? It's that it's an improper. Hopefully you remember that. The numerator always has to be smaller than the denominator. Right here, the numerator is larger. So, in order for us to figure this out, okay, we're going to take 4 divided by 3. This is the mathematical way to do that. 3 will go into 4 one time, and 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract. So now I'm going to bring the 1 up and the 3 over. So my final answer is 1 1/3, which is the same thing as 4/3. Okay? Another way to do that, if you haven't figured out how to do that mathematically, that's okay. Remember how we can do it illustratively. Okay? So if you were to look at 4/3, that means that the pies are broken up into 3s. Okay, so watch this. There's 1 pie, and I'm going to fill in 1, 2, 3. But it wants me to have 4, so I'm going to have to